I'll keep an eye open.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We apologize that we're a little bit late. We had a little bit of technical issues with Teams. We're still learning the ropes of how this all works. But welcome to, everyone to our March edition of the FCPS Family Webinars. My name is Chrissy Yonke, and I work with family and community engagement within Fauquier County Public Schools. Tonight we'll be focusing on the power of nutrition and how it can help students thrive in not only their academics and in the sports they play, but in all aspects of life. We also have several members of the community that provide resources and support in our community. You will also hear how closely our school division supports our students' nutrition and benefits it provides. Before I introduce our panel and presenters for tonight, please know that this webinar, you are free to use both the chat and the Q&A to ask any questions. Those are located at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to write out any questions you have as you are listening to our presenters. Our tech support, Kathy Medlock and myself, will be monitoring both of those areas, and we'll share your questions after the presentation has been concluded. And when we begin our panel discussion, we'll make sure we answer them. The majority of our speakers, we want to make you aware, are volunteering their personal time tonight to talk with us and are doing these presentations mostly from their home. Some of them have to do it from their car. So please understand if there are any children or pets that may be seen on the screen. It happens from time to time. So just know that they're in and they're out, and we're going to keep on rolling. Also, please know that the webinar is being recorded, and it will be translated in Spanish and shared out to our community within our division newsletters in the near future. Without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our panel. And when I say your name, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. And I'm going to actually start off with Carol because she is our translator, and she's going to give a little message just in case we have some families out there that need some Spanish translation. If Carol, you'll unmute. Carol, are you there?
She can't do anything.
She's raising her hand.
She can't. I don't think she can unmute.
She is a presenter now. Let's see.
She can't type or unmute, she says.
Okay. And I apologize, everybody. We're having a lot of technical issues tonight with Teams. If you are here and you do need Spanish, we will be translating this as well. So I apologize if we're unable to get Carol to join us and to speak Spanish at the moment. We'll keep working on making sure she can speak if she is able. All right. Let's go ahead and have Kathy, if you don't mind introducing yourself real quick.
Yeah, I'm Kathy. Oops. Yes, I'm Kathy Medlock. I'm at Cedarley Middle School, and I'm here to help support as best we can and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Renee?
Renee Norton with the Mental Health Association.
All right. Oh, and then we have Carol. All right, Carol's on. Awesome. Carol, will you do your message for us, please?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Carol Zuhars, and I am one of the interpreters here for FCPS, and I'm mainly here to help out if anybody needs support in any languages other than English, in this case, Spanish. Hola a todos, me llamo Carol Zuhar, soy una de las intérpretes aquí de las escuelas del condado de Fauquier. Si necesitan traducción de este seminario web mientras está sucediendo en este momento, indíquelo en el chat o levante la mano virtual que que tiene ahí adelante, ¿ok? Muchas gracias.
Okay, so we'll give them just a second and see if there's anybody that needs us to switch her to Spanish. Okay, let's go ahead and have Charity introduce herself, please.
Good evening. My name is Charity Furness, and I am with Fauquier Fish.
Thank you. And let's see, let's have Kristen McAuliffe.
Good evening. My name is Kristen McAuliffe, and I'm the supervisor of the Fresh program here in Fauquier County Public Schools. And joining me is...
Hello, I'm Sue Ann Fox. I'm the school nutrition director for Fauquier County Public Schools.
And I believe at this time we do not visually see them, at least I don't. Does anybody of our other presenters see them? Okay, so they'll be joining us by their voice at the moment. So if we're able to work out the technical difficulties, we will be sure to share them as well. We also have, who am I missing? Donna, did I have you introduced yet? Okay, Donna.
Hi, I'm Donna Guzman. I'm Student Services Supervisor with Fauquier County Public Schools. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and that way we can make sure that you can see our presentation. And all right, so we want to start off by, there's our Power of Nutrition slide. So we heard from Kristen, we heard from Susan. We also need to hear from Caitlin. Caitlin, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I am Caitlin Ashley. I am a registered dietitian out of Pace and Tab Nutrition in North Carolina, and I'm a former Fauquier High School athlete and student, which is why I'm joining the presentation today. So thanks for having me.
And finally, I think we covered everybody except for Jen, and we're going to let her actually take the lead with the start of our presentation. Jen, will you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we will start the presentation.
Hey y'all, good evening. I am Jen Gwinnett, mother of 3 Fauquier County Schools children, wife to a middle school teacher at Taylor Middle School, and clinical nutrition manager at Fauquier Health. It is an absolute honor to join you guys tonight and talk about nutrition. This is an incredible panel, so we will get rolling. There is so much that we learned from each other as we ran through this discussion last week. And I'm really glad y'all are here tonight. And Chrissy, if you'll just advance for me one. Okay. I'll give you one more little bit of information. So I'm a registered dietitian. We have Caitlin tonight, who's also a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 2006, and I'm also a diabetes educator. So here at the hospital, we've got several dietitians, and we would love to be a resource to anyone. So my contact information is available and in the slides. If you want to follow up afterwards, you can just call the hospital and get a hold of us. But tonight we're focusing on the importance of nutrition in our mental, physical, and academic success for our students. It's actually National Nutrition Month, so this is a timely opportunity to have this discussion. As everybody knows, the easiest thing to kind of wrap your mind around when you think about this conversation is how nutrition affects your physical performance. And most of that conversation is going to come from Caitlin tonight with her experience in sports nutrition. So I'm going to leave that to her. And I'm going to kind of take us down a very practical road for applying nutrition to our homes and every day for our students. We've all heard the saying, you are what you eat. And it's so true. And it's so easy to kind of forget in the day-to-day. So I want to give you guys a little illustration to start off with for us to kind of hang some ideas on. Think about your vehicle, which all of us need every day, or the bus, or however you get to school. You're getting to school somehow, right? Most of us have a vehicle. If you had the opportunity to choose gas for your vehicle, and you had these two options, say you have a guy on the side of the road with a rusty barrel and some gas, and he's selling that gas to you for $1. And then you've got Wawa across the street, and Wawa is selling you gas for $3. All right. I can guarantee you that most of us are going to go to Wawa and pay a little bit extra to get gas from Wawa instead of the guy with the rusty barrel to put in our cars, right? But the crazy thing is that when it comes to food, because of the powers of marketing and the food culture we live in today, so many of us, myself included, don't do that when it comes to nutrition. So often we choose the things that are exciting and cheap. This literally came from my desk, y'all, because I ate them earlier today, over the things that are kind of not very flashy and have little stickers on them. So kind of the goal always in nutrition as we work with clients as dietitians is just to look for where we can make improvements. We'll never be perfect, but we can always grow and learn. And that's the goal of tonight, is kind of to grow together and learn together a little bit more about nutrition and easy ways to practically apply making healthier choices in our lives. The other part of that conversation, it's not just about food choices and being super practical. Also, food is part of life. Food brings joy, food brings comfort, food brings us together. And so that's an important thing that I just wanted to address tonight for you guys to know. That balance is so crucial. And we'll talk about that as we keep going. So the first thing I always love to do when I'm talking about food with folks is to say, if I asked you, what should you eat? I guarantee you can write in the chat. So I would love for you guys to interact as much as you want to. But if I asked you, hey, what's good nutrition? What should you eat? About every person to a person would say, oh, I should eat fruits and vegetables, right? So we all know what to eat. And then the question is kind of, why aren't we doing that? What's keeping us from doing that? So some of the barriers, that's a fancy term for why we're not doing it. Some of the barriers are often knowledge, budget, time, cooking ability, planning. So I'm going to get into those next. You can advance for me, Chrissy. Awesome. Okay, so this is a great, all of these, if you guys will click on your slide decks when we're done tonight, everything that's underlined is a link because I want to put as much knowledge and as much information into your hands for future use as I can. So I love this resource called Food Rules. It's by a journalist, Michael Pollan, who is everywhere in the food scene. And he's created several documentaries that are also linked here. But the easiest, most practical application that I can give you, oh, I think our slides went away, but I've got them right here. So I'll pull that here. Is this idea, and talking with your students especially. Students, if you guys are here tonight, I'm so glad you're here. Feel free to ask any questions. Is thinking about where your food comes from. So does your food come from a factory or does it come from a farm, right? So if I hold up, these are both fruit-ish items, right? So we've got a fruit bar and an actual piece of fruit, right? So one looks like it came from a farm versus one looks like it came from a factory. And the idea of using that principle and choosing what to eat comes from this little book called Food Rules. And one of the rules is if it came from a plant, like these things, those are things you want to eat. And if it was made in a plant, those are the things you don't want to eat as often. Okay, so that's one little food rule to live by that I'm going to give you guys tonight. Another idea that you can kind of think about when it comes to food is eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. So those are ideas from Michael Pollan, and you guys have links for those here. Check them out. They're really awesome. And one of the most fun ways as a family to kind of challenge yourselves and grow in food knowledge is to watch a movie together. So check out those documentaries. They're really great. And we'll go to the next slide. The other thing that I wanted us to think about tonight in the conversation is a diet versus dieting. Okay, and this is something, if you ever go meet with a nutritionist, that you would probably talk about. We all have a diet. That's what we eat. Everybody has a way of eating, and that is normal. We all eat food. But this idea of dieting is kind of when we're doing something temporary and we're restricting, or we're taking something out of our diet. And it's like with an intense focus, I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to get my weight down, or I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to achieve this result. In general, we want to think of things as food is a lifetime. So we don't want to do things that are temporary or short-lived. We want to be healthy folks who love food and love to eat. My goal is never to, when I'm working with clients, never to restrict things, but just to kind of give you information to empower you to make choices for yourself that are helpful. And that's really important too when you're a parent and kind of interacting with your student about food and what they should eat. The word allowed, we don't allow that, or we don't do that. Those can put a lot of stress into the relationship around food. Just kind of like if you've ever been on a diet as a grown-up, it's not pleasant. And so kind of making healthy choices just normal, part of everyday life is the goal. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about a way to do that. So an awesome resource for families, parents, adults, children, whoever, is to use this stoplight food guide. Another awesome resource is the plate method, which Caitlin's going to talk about in just a little bit. So this idea of a stoplight, though, when you're talking with your kids, it's really practical. So green are go foods. Yellow foods would be slow or whoa choices. And then red foods would be not foods that you don't eat as often, whoa, because they're higher in calories. They're the fun foods, right? So whenever my kids, we talk about things, I'm like, guys, you can't eat cake for every meal. Those are the whoa foods. I mean, would we want to eat cake for every meal? Maybe, but I think we get tired of it eventually. So kind of teaching your kids to have some hooks to hang their nutrition knowledge on is great. And this resource is really helpful for that. So when you see under practical tips where it says stoplight, if you click on that, it gives you the whole resource that you guys can look at as a family. But generally speaking, go foods are anytime foods. If you're familiar with the Weight Watchers program, which a lot of folks are, Weight Watchers made raw fruits and vegetables absolutely unlimited. They don't get points anymore. And that's because you really you can't eat too many of them. And raw fruits and vegetables kind of naturally have this acidity through all the phytochemicals in them that you won't overeat them. If you've ever, say, eaten grapes, like you just kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, I cannot eat any more grapes. And you've had your fill of them. Because of the way that foods are processed in food manufacturing and the added flavorings, it's really hard to get that same sensation with a processed food. What do I have here? I brought an example. This is a favorite example of mine. So it's really hard for me to fill up on this. I can keep eating, keep eating, and could probably eat the whole bag. Just because this processed food doesn't have fiber, it doesn't have the natural phytochemicals and acidity that tell your body stop. Whereas things like this do. So anytime foods are the healthiest ones. They're not too calorically dense, and they're generally straight from the farm, like we talked about earlier. The slow food choices are kind of in the middle, right? They're not fresh raw fruits and vegetables or meats or proteins in their original form, but they're also not super, super highly processed. So they kind of fill out the middle of our diet a little bit. And then the whoa foods are the super fun things that we don't eat very often or shouldn't eat very often if we're looking for balance in our diet. I did include a little article here from a dietitian, registered dietitian, that says eat dessert. And she talks about how she eats dessert every day. One of the mottos that I love when I'm working with students is a treat a day, but then you've got to get really good at identifying what is a treat. So even things like Lucky Charms, which would fall in that red category as we go through, and you'll see they're kind of like treats. They're kind of like cake. They're really sweet. They're really yummy. They're really awesome. So those could almost be considered a treat. So kind of helping your kids learn to group foods and identify where are they on the spectrum of health can be a really awesome tool. And then I also included a little article here about just kind of handing the reins over as parents to your students and empowering them in their choices. So how do we say, you're the one in charge of your food? I want to help you learn to manage your intake and make good choices, so that there isn't this negativity surrounding food choices, or even situations where we're locking cabinets, we're hiding things, kids are sneaking food. All of those things are normal. I've encountered all of them in patients in my own home, but they're not the goal, and they're not ideal for a healthy relationship with food as our kids grow up. And any dietitian could help you guys work through that if those are things going on in your home. All right, we'll go on to the next slide. All right, I broke down on the next 4 slides from the food guide, generally just to give you guys a quick overview of what using this tool would look like. So here we were comparing, say, a fresh apple to maybe applesauce. And then maybe in the last one, I would put, say, like the apple bar. It's really processed. It's got 13 grams of sugar in it. So that kind of helps you guys see where an apple would break down on that slide. You can go to the next one. So grains, we can see the difference here between, say, things in their original format like plain oatmeal, or I would say maybe in the yellow category would be like the 25% less sugar oatmeal. And then in the red category would be that super yummy, awesome flavored oatmeal that has all the sugar in it and, you know, maple brown sugar that my kids are like, let's get that one, Mom. So kind of balancing. And even a great conversation to have there is, say your kids are used to or really enjoy the super sweetened one. Say, well, hey, do you guys want to try making it their opportunity to try something new? Do you guys want to try the less sugar? See if it tastes different. See if we like it. Do you want to try flavoring your own oatmeal? We could actually buy maple syrup, and we've got cinnamon in the pantry. You could flavor it yourself. So just looking for little changes that you can make and making it their choice is really important. And so use this tool of the stoplight to kind of help guide between where do things fall on that spectrum of better choices versus choices that you just don't make quite as often. We can go to the next one. Everybody able to hear me okay, by the way?
Yes, we're just having a hard time seeing your camera. I don't know if we can fix that. It might be just with our glitches that we had. So just know that I don't think we can see you physically. We just see your slides.
Okay, I'll turn it off and turn it back on real quick just to see if we get anything there.
Yeah.
Did that help, Kristen?
Yes, that's actually your backup. Don't know why, guys. We're sorry. Teams is a little glitchy tonight. Bear with us.
Thanks for letting me know. And you can hear okay?
Yes, I can hear. Everybody can hear.
I'm almost done, guys, and then I'm going to hand it off to Caitlin. This was a great slide as well. So I wanted to include the snacks and sweets because let me tell you, with students and myself, I know I am a snacky girl, and that's okay. So when we are born, we often eat, you know, every 2 to 3 hours, and Caitlin's going to hit on this too, but eating frequently is not a bad thing. But we just want to watch the volume. So our bodies only need so much food in a day, and it just has to get divided out. And there's plenty of space in a day to have snacks. Generally, the most helpful way that I find people who have success long-term in weight maintenance often eat 5 times a day: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. So that's totally okay. It's really just the snacks that we're choosing. As you would imagine, there's a difference, right, between, say, popping a bag of low-fat natural popcorn and having Takis, right? So that would be the ends of the spectrum there that I could give you. And actually, what's cool about popcorn, let your kids eat popcorn. Like, it's totally from the earth. It's really filling. Try not to get the one with movie theater or work them down to the natural. but totally natural food comes straight from there. If they look at those little kernels, they're like, oh yeah. Something else that's really cool is if you grew up and you made popcorn on the stovetop, and you shook it and watched the whole thing pop, you can actually teach your kids to do that with no flavors in the microwave if you take a paper lunch sack. You can put those fresh kernels straight into a paper lunch sack, tighten the top over, and make your own microwave popcorn in a paper lunch sack. So that's a fun little, dietitian secret from tonight if you didn't know that already tonight. And we can go to the next one. Okay, drinks. This is a big one. So we get a lot of extra calories from drinks, especially if you're drinking any kind of regular soda, tea, Gatorade, Kool-Aid, all of those things have a lot of extra calories. So if you or your student are struggling with overweight or obesity, kind of taking away those calories from beverages is the easiest, quickest place to cut calories quickly and kind of see instant results in a week or two with how your weight would respond, because those are oftentimes just extra calories. We really want to stick to water or unsweetened beverages. If your kids kind of are used to the flavor, the little packets of Crystal Light can be great to send for their water bottles at school. And when it does come to fruit juice, getting the 100% fruit juice, diluting it a little bit can also be a great way to go. So those are some thoughts there. And I'm going to go ahead to my last slide. Okay, more practical things for you guys. Learning to meal plan is really, really important and necessary if you're going to kind of make changes in your lifestyle and in your family. I've linked up 4 really awesome links. Where you shop really affects your food prices. So all of these links refer to shopping at a grocery store called Aldi. We have an Aldi an Aldi grocery store, not Aldi, Virginia. So we actually have an Aldi grocery store in Haymarket. It's not that far. And you will notice a big difference in prices there. Because
There's
I know
also one in
of
Culpeper too.
Oh, thank you, Chrissy. So you'll notice a big difference in prices there. And their produce turns over quite quickly. So they actually tend to have really, really fresh produce. Now, here in Warrenton, we are so blessed with our farmers market, which opens next week. Yay. So always getting the freshest produce you can, experimenting with growing. Tomatoes for me grew great here in Warrenton last year. And so kind of fun things to do there. But I did want to give you guys some just really practical resources on learning to cook. Learning to budget, because let me tell you, food prices are crazy. So how do you budget? It's so easy because when we go into the corner store or the Wawa and you can just grab a bag of chips and a candy bar and satisfy everybody for a couple bucks. It's like, why spend why spend all that money on groceries? Some of the food might go bad. It takes more time. All of those things are true. And all of those things are barriers to being healthier. So what I want to put into your hand are resources and tools that are practical in real life. Make it easy to cook, make it quick to cook, make it affordable to cook. So when my husband was in grad school and we were what I thought was, financially strapped, we would always shop at Aldi grocery store. And I swore when I grow up and had a big girl job like I do now, we won't shop at Aldi anymore. Guess what? We still shop at Aldi because it's just practical for a family to live on a budget and meal plan, and it's quick to get in, quick to get out. So highly recommend that. There's a link here for learning to cook with some really great basics. And we might do some cooking classes here at the hospital. Would love to invite you guys on First Friday coming up. I'll be out there talking about, I'm going to be doing a class on food rules, the book that I mentioned here. I'm going to do a class on that for free at the hospital this summer, and I'm probably going to end that with some cooking demos. So, but here's a link for now on learning to cook. And then the last one is an article about savoring, because the most important thing is to slow down and to savor food together. So those are some resources for you guys. Honored to speak to you, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. And just to mention all these links, we will share this presentation when you registered for the webinar. We have a pool of all your emails, and we'll send you this presentation with all the links so that you can see all the great resources she provided. And then we'll also include them in our newsletter when we put out the recording. So just so you know, if you're wondering and wanting to see all these great resources Jen shared. So thank you so much. Okay, up next we have Miss Caitlin Ashley.
Cool. All right. So I am Katie. I'm a registered dietitian working out of North Carolina. I work in a private practice that specializes in eating disorders. And I also do a lot of focus in sports nutrition. So I'm often, working at the intersection of those two things. And I'm a former Fauquier County student athlete, so excited to share some information with you all tonight. The focus of my part of this presentation is going to be fueling adequately for growth and development. So the energy needs of growing kids is very high, as I'm sure you all know, and including both the physical and cognitive development of adolescents, in addition to physical activity, whether that physical activity is sports participation, whether it's movement throughout the day for healthy lifestyle, things of that nature. And we can go ahead and get started on the next slide with that. Cool. So when Jen was chatting, she was talking about the term diet, meaning the overall eating pattern. So the way that we eat. This first slide is talking about what does our overall eating pattern support? Why do we need to be eating food? What is that energy consumed from food going towards? And the goal, or at least one goal of eating, is to ensure energy balance, meaning the energy that we are consuming from our food is meeting the demand of our body based on its overall energy expenditure. So the different components of that energy expenditure, or the different ways that our body is using energy on a daily basis, are shown here in this little pie chart. And the biggest one, that blue section, the BMR, that refers to the basal metabolic rate. So that's the energy that our bodies need to maintain functioning while at rest. So if you were to be laying in your bed, not doing anything for 24 hours, how much energy would your body need from food to support things like your lungs respirating or your lungs breathing, your temperature being regulated, your heart beating, all of those different things just to keep us alive, right? And you'll notice that's the biggest section by far. Okay. So secondly, we have the TEF, that little yellow section, or the thermic effect of food. So this is the energy that your body needs to break down the nutrients in food so that they can be digested and absorbed by the body. So for example, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Our body can't just take that and immediately use it as energy. It has to break down that peanut butter and jelly sandwich break down those carbohydrates, break down the proteins, break down the fats. We'll talk about on the next slide, but break down those things into smaller and smaller nutrients that our body can actually use. And then lastly, the physical activity piece, right? So that's a pretty significant portion. And some of these total daily energy expenditure pie charts, they separate physical activity or exercise activity thermogenesis from kind of more structured activity and non-exercise thermogenesis, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. But really, the body is responding to overall stress and activity levels. So it can be helpful to conceptualize those things together. So for example, if your kid is going to tennis practice, right, every day after school, that's something that their body needs to support. Their body needs energy from food to support that. But also it's anything outside of laying in a bed for 24 hours, not doing anything, right? So walking around school, hanging out with their friends in the backyard, walking up and down stairs throughout the day, walking to and from classes, all of those things our body needs energy for. And then we can go to the next slide and talk about where we get the energy from. Sweet. So now, the focus of this slide is talking about where the energy to support that pie chart, to fill up that pie chart that we just talked about, where that comes from. And the answer is in macronutrients, macro meaning big. So these are the nutrients in food that provide our body with energy. We also have micronutrients, micro meaning small. That's our vitamins and minerals. These are also incredibly important. We want a variety of those. But for the purpose of this part of the presentation, those aren't providing the body with calories or energy. So that's not going to supporting filling up that pie chart, meeting the energy demands of the body. Including a balance of these different things shown here is also important, not only to ensure that the body is getting adequate energy overall, but also because each of these different macronutrients is serving a different function. So we could, eat enough to support, fill up that pie chart, meet all of our energy needs from the previous slide. But if it's all coming from carbs or it's all coming from protein, the body and the brain are not going to be able to function optimally. So with carbohydrates are found in both our starches and our grains, and also fruits and vegetables. In the next slide, I'll share a plate method that'll help with portioning these different macronutrients, kind of a visual guideline for that. And the fruits and vegetables and the starches and grains are actually separated. And the reason for that is because it can be really challenging to get enough carbohydrates, especially for an active and growing kid, if they're only coming from fruits and vegetables. However, if you're only getting your carbohydrates from starches and grains, you might be missing out on some really important key vitamins and minerals. We've also got our proteins, right? These are our main building block in our body, building things like hormones and, helping to repair muscle tissues after exercise, helping with bone mineralization, all of these things that are really important for growing adolescents. And then dietary fats, which are another source of energy. They protect nerves and joints. They help to absorb different nutrients from food that need a fat source in order for the body to use it. And certain dietary fats are also really indicated in our mood and our cognition. And I know you're going to get some information soon in the coming slides on the role of nutrition in mental health as well. So we can go to that next slide then and talk about the plate method. So I alluded to this in the previous slide. Again, this is a visual guidepost for portioning. It probably looks a lot like my plate, if you've ever seen that. That is a little bit different. And I really encourage parents and families to use this plate, especially for really active kids and growing adolescents, because with the portions on my plate, you might run the risk of underfueling because the grains and starches are so much smaller and the fruits and vegetables are so much higher. That can be appropriate for some folks for sure, but for a lot of growing kids, it's not going to be enough carbohydrates to support their daily needs. The link that is listed on this slide is a really great overview of using this, talking about those macronutrients in a little bit more detail if you're interested in that. And it also includes an easy training plate, a moderate training plate, and a hard training plate. So a hard training plate might be if your kid has like a soccer game or something like that, versus moderate would be if they have more of a low-key practice that day, for example. Easy might be more of a rest day. In general, in my practice, I'm encouraging parents and I'm encouraging, student athletes to use the moderate or the hard training plate, again, so we're not running the risk of underfueling. Just as for reference, this would be using a standard 10-inch dinner plate, so not like a little salad plate or a little dessert plate, but a full-size dinner plate. And you'll notice that we're filling up most of the plate with these different food groups. So you'll have access to this link to look at some more examples of that if you're interested. One other thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of fueling adequately for growth and development is what I call the rule of threes. And I am talking with just about every person that I meet with about this rule of threes, because it can be a really good kind of backbone structure, a little checklist to consider to make sure that you're eating enough and eating consistently throughout the day. So There's 3 of them and they each have the number 3 in them. So having 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks, like Jen was talking about as well, having that consistency throughout the day, eating every 3 to 4 hours, that can help with just the structure of the overall day, not going too long without eating, not getting to that place of feeling underfueled. And then that balance of the 3 macronutrients on each of the plates that you're serving or that you're making. So that can be just a good little checklist to go off, make sure that your kid is eating enough and consistently throughout the day. Cool. And then we can go to one last slide that I'll talk to you all about today. Is I want to talk, I've alluded to underfueling a lot, but I did want to talk about just some of the risks of underfueling. And so one major risk of underfueling or undereating in adolescence is impaired growth and development. Specifically, the bones cannot properly mineralize to get denser, to increase stature if the body's not getting enough energy. Hormonal regulation gets disrupted with undereating or underfueling, and that can impact everything from sleep to appetite to menstruation to muscle mass development, etc. And the brain is also particularly really sensitive to getting adequate fueling. And so mood and cognition can be very quickly compromised, even with mild undereating. So did want to, just talk about some of those risks. I also like to talk about, or at least introduce this concept of relative energy deficiency in sport, or REDS, which is depicted on the slide. So when I was a high school and college athlete, this was actually called the female athlete triad, and you can see that at the top of the graphic. And this captured the impacts to bone health, such as stress reactions and stress fractures. This included menstrual disorders such as loss of periods or lack of consistent periods, and disordered eating behaviors or underfueling that were often seen in female athletes. So this was sort of the gold standard of diagnosing and conceptualizing what was seen in female athletes specifically. However, it was missing the mark in terms of some of the other body systems that are compromised when the body doesn't have enough energy. And it also doesn't translate well to patterns that we see in male athletes. And we know that males are often affected by underfueling in sports as well. So this relative energy deficiency in sport is able to diagnose low energy availability in both male and female athletes. And it gives us some other criteria that helps us to understand what's happening in these cases. So for example, we can see the impact on performance, increased risk of injury. It can affect the cardiovascular system, anemia, right? There's lots of different things that are happening across the body. And with this menstrual disorders here, right, that would only apply to our female athletes. But when we're talking about the endocrine system or the hormonal system in general, we know that can become dysregulated in males as well. And that can be detrimental to their overall health and really impact their performance as well. My last point that I want to make before switching things over here is that negative energy imbalance. So my last bullet point on this slide, when we are not meeting that energy pie chart, whether that's intentionally through, trying to restrict food, like intentional sort of disordered eating, or it's just not eating enough because schedules are really busy, we forgot to pack snacks, etc., right? And that there's an energy deficit happening, or there's negative energy imbalance, because the brain is so sensitive to getting sufficient fuel and getting sufficient energy. Even that can increase risks of eating disorders and disordered eating behaviors. And I see that a lot in my practice of just kind of this unintentional under eating can sometimes increase those thoughts that are happening pertaining to negative body image or controlling food, etc. So just to bring it all back, the importance of making sure that your kids and your families are eating enough to meet their body's energy needs.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. Just for those that hopped on while Katie was talking and might have missed this announcement, all the slides that are being shared, the presentation will be emailed to you that registered, and we will also include it in our recording that we're going to put out in our newsletter. So be on the lookout. Any links that they shared, that Katie shared, that Jen shared earlier, will all be put out there for you all. So thank you so much, Katie. That was really important information. Okay, now we are going to have Miss Renee Norden join us from mental health, and she's going to talk about the mental health effects of nutrition.
Thank you so much. I've been with the Mental Health Association for 3 years, but before that, I spent 21 years working in schools. And so I could see the direct impact, not only in my own family, but also in the students I worked with, about that connection between mental health and physical health, and how it really is, I show here on the slide the 3 pillars. All of these 3 things are interreliant upon each other. You need to know that our brains in the womb are formed at the same time our gut is. So from the very beginning, they are always interacting. We know that 70% of our immunity is based in our gut. What does that really mean? Well, it means that what we eat influences how we think and feel. And how we think and feel can also, unfortunately or fortunately, influence what we decide to eat. And so, you've heard a lot about, good eating and what to focus on. And so I'd like to take it in a little different direction, just really talking about that mental health aspect, right? And so that mental health, what we all want to have is, a better mood, be less stressed, have an decrease in getting sick, right? And an ability to think. And so I'm going to talk more about those things. If you could advance to the next slide. And so to give you a good idea, there have been many studies done on this. I mentioned that 70% of your immunity is based in your gut. But a recent study has revealed that that little yellow sugar packet, Splenda, actually changes the gut microbes and leads to inflammation in your body, that could cause your hands to hurt, your joints to hurt, but it also increases anxiety, right? And so we need to pay attention to those things. There have been other research as well. So I don't know how many of you all have heard of the Mediterranean diet. The picture on the slide shows you what's in the Mediterranean diet. It's a lot of fruit and vegetables and eggs, healthy grains, leafy vegetables, as you can see from that picture, lots of different colors. We know that people who practice the Mediterranean diet had a decrease in their moderate to severe depression symptoms. We also, know that, in a 2019 study, those that ate more fruits and vegetables, their mental health symptoms decreased. And this isn't, just the cool thing for me is that so much research has been done on it. You can Google it. Other things like a recent report in JAMA, which is the Journal of Medicine, found that there was an increased likelihood of depression for those who used artificial sweeteners. So what does that mean? Our 2 dietitians talked about the importance of, water and not sodas. Yeah, sodas, I have friends who actually like, oh no, I'm not, doing all that sugar in a Coke, but I'm going to have my Diet Coke. We know that those artificial sweeteners, first of all, can cause and we'll get to this in the next slide, an increase in that craving of sugar. So it sets up the system that really isn't benefiting our whole body. We know that drinking things and eating things high in sugar, with caffeine and all that, increases anxiety. It's funny, I laugh because I have a very good friend who experiences anxiety, but she also drinks Monsters. And she finally realized when she was after drinking a Monster that her anxiety was going through the roof, that maybe if she stopped drinking Monsters, she wouldn't have that anxiety response. That anxiety response comes from a stress response. It actually increases your cortisol, your stress levels, which of course is going to cause you to feel more anxious. If we go to the next slide, please. It's also been found that people with low magnesium might be more likely to have anxiety or depression. So I know our dietitians have talked about fast food. I like to say that when you're going grocery shopping, if you stay on the outside, so as you come in, stay on the outside route, you'll avoid those ultra processed foods, those easy foods. Unfortunately, those easy foods are designed in a way to make you crave more, right? It stimulates your dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitter is the thing that helps us form habits. And so those sugar and chemicals in the ultra processed foods, once we eat them, want us to eat more. It forms a pattern, just like any of the sugar. The other thing to think about is sugar. Yeah, that cake might look really great, and it's fine to have a taste or two. But eating as much as you want, you're going to get to a sugar, you'll have a sugar high, and that sugar crash can lead to feelings of depression. Really eating clean is what will help you. I know the dietitians talked about having, or one of the things I used to do with my kids is I would let them, as their treat when we went grocery shopping, to select any fruits or vegetables as a way to encouraging them to cook and learn to cook. We made our own Chopped. If you ever watch the cooking show Chopped on TV, we would make our own Chopped baskets. And I would put a bunch of things in a basket and then they'd have to cook something with it. Any way we can get in the kitchen, I'd encourage you all also to limit those processed foods. And the easiest way to do that is not buying them. Have carrots always available, have celery always available. I know at first you'll miss the really sweet tasting, but once you've probably been avoiding those extra sugars for a month or so after that, when you drink them, you're like, I can't believe I ever used to eat these things. But I really encourage you to think about what you eat so that you can have more power over your mental health. And I'd be happy to take questions after this.
All right. Thank you, Renee.
Oh, wait, I had one more slide.
I was going to say, wait, one more.
Sorry.
We have one more.
Okay. So to get out of the negative cycle, it is possible and even probable. So I encourage a couple things. I had students who would always say, I've got to stop eating all this junk, or, oh, I don't know why all this junk food is bad for you. I encourage you to take it, for 2 to 3 weeks, keep a food journal and a mood journal. Record what you eat. And if you don't have to put it in a journal, you can put it in your phone. And then record how you feel before you eat, directly after you eat, and later, just to see. A lot of people are on the food sensitivity or food allergy bandwagon. And for some people, yes, there are real, true allergies. But it might just be that a certain food doesn't agree with you or makes you feel bad. Or doesn't make you feel healthy. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're actually allergic to it, but maybe we need to choose better. If you're struggling with depression, I'd encourage you to eat more foods from the Mediterranean or Japanese diets, which are high in B12, B9, and zinc. Get rid of regular and diet sodas. Alcohol. It surprises me how many depressed people drink alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. There's no way around it, so it isn't going to help you feel better. And then any of the partially hydrogenated oils have also been shown to make depression worse. For anxiety, avoid white bread and white pasta, fake sugars, high caffeine drinks, of course. Then increasing those leafy greens like spinach and Swiss chard, egg yolks, nut seeds, those type of things. Anything that's going to increase the zinc, magnesium, B vitamins, and probiotics. Probiotics are those things that nurture your gut. Those can be things like yogurt and sauerkraut and pickles. Anything that is going to help feed your gut is going to help your mind. for those who want to really, look at what they're eating and how it affects them, there's a diet called Whole30. And it is not a diet as in restricting your food. Well, it restricts types of food, but it is only for 30 days. And there isn't, they tell you that you can eat, they take out any of the food that causes inflammation. And then after 30 days, you can introduce it back in to see if it causes mood swings or other, not feeling great. I know a number of women who it's totally transformed their lives. So you can just Google Whole30. It is an eating plan for 30 days, and then you reintroduce food. Now I'm finished.
Thank you, Renee. All right, now we're going to jump right into the nutrition that we have within our school division with Ms. Sue Ann Fox.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. I would like to talk to you about the nutritional advantages of school meals. After hearing all that wonderful information about the different categories of food and how it can benefit our bodies, there are some really big changes that have happened in school nutrition over the last 20 years, but really none so much as in the last 5 years. School meals are a vital aspect of a child's school day because they not only provide sustenance, but ensure that every child has access to nutrients to thrive academically and physically. As Katie talked about the physical needs for athletes, we're feeding students breakfast and lunch, sometimes 5 days a week. And we have a vital role to expose children to varieties of fruits and vegetables. Every meal that's served with a school lunch or breakfast includes a fruit or vegetable. And there's a very large variety for all the meals that are served. And it's our mission to ensure that all students are able to receive a balanced, nutritious breakfast and lunch each day that they're in school. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of really interesting things that I kind of take for granted, and I think that it's really important to know that school meals actually have less than 10% saturated fat. There are very strict regulations on how much sodium, sugar, and calories can be served in any particular serving in a school meal. If you are interested, we have an app called Meal Viewer, and you can download it on your phone or on your computer. And the menus for your school are on there, as well as you can go to each individual food. And if you click on it, you can see the nutritional information, any possible allergens with that food, as well as a picture. So it's a really great opportunity with your children in the evening. If you're not sure what they might want to get the next day, you can look at all the selections that are available for the next day and talk about the nutritional value and maybe what they'll choose. So there are always salads every day available as an entree at all schools, as well as a hot choice. And there are generally cold choices as well. So if you have a picky eater who really just likes peanut butter and jelly, that is an option. And what's also really interesting is that school meals are developed to serve meals to kids that are things that they like. So for instance, that peanut butter and jelly sandwich is made on whole grain bread. Our pizza is made on a whole grain crust with enriched sauce and low fat cheese. And if there's pepperoni, it's a low fat chicken or turkey pepperoni. So we're serving things that kids like, but in a much healthier way. And we've really worked hard in the last couple of years to increase the amount of scratch cooking. So we're able to really control the amount of sodium and anything that would be additional to meals, such as butter, any kind of oil, that can all be controlled in the scratch cooking. Next slide. So if you compare the nutritional content of school lunch with a packed meal, packed lunches often vary in quality. Some are very good. Some sometimes lack balance and variety. And by offering a standardized balanced menu, school meals also provide more protein, fiber, vitamin A, and calcium than the average packed meal. School meals also tend to have fewer calories, less saturated fat, and less sugar than packed meals. Meals packed with the same nutrient-dense foods as a school meal on average also cost more. So choosing a school meal is convenient. It's also economical and nutritious. Next slide, please. So we heard a lot about whole grains, and they really are important, and that's kind of a cornerstone for school meals. So everything that we serve, we only have to serve 50%, but we really strive to serve 100% of the grains that we serve in Fauquier County as whole grains. So we have whole grain bread, we have brown rice, we have everything that we serve tends to be on a whole grain, which really is a powerhouse for energy and sustained energy throughout the day. And excuse me for a second. And we incorporate the whole grains in a simple yet effective way to boost the nutrition in the child's meal or for their overall well-being. Next slide, please. Okay. So because students are exposed to so many fruits and grains, we actually are working with them to learn to eat and make healthy choices. The ladies, as they serve the meals, often encourage them to try new things, or will give them a taste of something that maybe they've never had before. We have a partnership with the DoD Fresh, which is the government commodity system. And we get a lot of fruits and vegetables, and they try to make those as local as possible. So throughout the year, we have apples and oranges. Whenever they're available, we have strawberries and watermelon and plums and any fresh fruit that's available through the DoD Fresh program. We also partner with Fresh to bring in a lot of things that might need a little more processing than what we can do in the school cafeteria, and they will bring it into our new combined kitchen, which is at Southeastern Elementary School. And Dr. Neibauer has been a wonderful partner in helping us to develop that kitchen in a way that we can bring things in from local farmers and we can have them processed into a format that can be used easily in the kitchen, such as taking whole sweet potatoes and cubing them so that they can be roasted in the kitchen. We have had fresh strawberry salsa, fresh tomato salsa. We've used white beans to make homemade hummus, which has been actually really well received by the elementary students as well as the high school students. We are currently working on a fresh beef slider. So we're forming those patties and they're brought out to the schools from our fresh team, who then put it in the refrigerator and take all that work away for our team so that they can go ahead and do what they need to do during the day. And that partnership, if you're not familiar with, Fresh stands for Fauquier Reaches for Excellence in School Health, has been really an ongoing project through COVID, but in the last several years, we've really been able to develop that into something new every day. And we are really looking forward to all the opportunities to work with local farmers. We had Mr. Odell at Mary Walter donated some pumpkins, and Fresh turned that into fresh pumpkin bread that the students really enjoyed. We're hoping to get that onto the menu. And Claude Thompson has some school gardens that they do a great outreach. They also provide fresh fruits and vegetables on the line for Miss Ann to sample. And the kids get educational information about that, as well as get a little taste of that as they come through. And there really is no end to what we're going to be able to do with our partnership. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to, what do you want to mention about? Oh, yes, and thank you. So one wonderful thing that we've been able to do through an opportunity with the Virginia Department of Health is we are able to offer breakfast for free for all students in Fauquier through the end of the school year. So any student who comes to the line can come through, and they do have to take a fruit or vegetable. That is a requirement of getting a free meal. But they can come through and they can get whole grains and they can get fresh fruits and vegetables, low-fat milk. And also, one important thing I also neglected to say is that a school lunch includes two-ounce servings of a lean meat or meat alternative, 2 servings of vegetables. Depending on the grade level, they either get 1 or 2 servings of fruit. They get 2 ounces or 2 servings, so a bun would be 2. Each half is 1 serving, and a cup of rice and so on for grains. But then they also receive low-fat milk. So everything that is served in the school day meets a Smart Snack guideline and also meets all the recommendations for food for the grade level that they're being served.
Christy, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sure thing.
So Sue Ann touched upon the first couple bullets there as she was speaking, and I'm just going to talk to the last two before we move on to the fresh portion of this presentation. We do partner closely with school nutrition on the What's Fresh Harvest of the Month program, and this was developed by the Fresh Chef based on conversations that she had with area farmers about what could be grown and sourced locally. You heard Sue Ann mention a couple times about working with farmers, trying to source things locally, and this program was developed with all of that in mind. And finally, we do distribute fresh produce throughout the summer, and I'll touch on that a little bit more if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide.
And there's your name tag, Kristen McCullough. All right.
You can see there's a lot of collaboration between the Fresh program and school nutrition, and there were just slides that we couldn't separate without each speaking. So we figured that that would be best. But we do have what we call the Fresh Harvest of the Month program, which I mentioned was created with area farmers to identify what could be sourced locally. What that program involves are educational posters are sent out to the schools that give nutrition information for the students and staff. Also, as part of that program is we have posters that we send out to the schools of different ways to try the item. So we provide real pictures of different ways that that item might be served in the cafeteria or the child may see it at home. And I think it's important to mention with this Harvest of the Month program, we are gradually increasing the number of instances that students see it on the menu. We started off with just getting it on the menu once. This year it's on twice, and now we're looking at expanding that even more. So for example, if the What's Fresh Harvest of the Month menu item is sweet potatoes, you might see it as a whole sweet potato. You might see it cubed as a roasted sweet potato. You might see it cut up as fries. And so those are three different ways that the students would experience it without seeing the same item over and over again. Also part of that program is the educational part of life cycle posters. So we take that item and show the students that how it goes through the different life cycle. And at the elementary level, we've actually animated those posters and made videos. So when we come to the schools to do a tasting with the students, they can not only see the item, see how it's grown, see the stages it goes through, and then they're presented with the item where they can touch it, they can smell it, and hopefully taste that item. And the purpose behind that school tasting is so that they can experience it before they see it on the line in the cafeteria. Sometimes children are hesitant to take something new. So what we try to do is explain it to them, educate them, let them see how it benefits their body before we even ask them to try it. And then the hope is that they will go ahead and try it. Some children won't, and so then we ask them to touch it or to smell it, just something to give them exposure to that item. So the last bullet you see there are about the school tastings. Oh, can we hold for 1 second? Thanks.
Sorry about that.
Nope, you're good. At the elementary level, we visit each elementary school 3 times a month. We visit 3 elementary schools a month to provide a tasting opportunity where we expose them to the item that's going to be on the school menu. Well, this month, you may have seen the press release that went out. We did debut blender bikes, and that's essentially a bike with a blender on the front. And what we did is we took our What's Fresh Harvest of the Month item, which was spinach smoothies, and went out to the middle schools, and it was a strawberry spinach smoothie, so it wasn't just straight spinach that we blended up. And that was a huge hit at the middle school level, but also we did that tasting at the elementary level as well, and the students enjoyed it. At the bottom, you'll see a link to our website, and that has our whole What's Fresh Harvest of the Month program. So you can see links to all of our posters, life cycle videos, and all of the recipes that we use in our schools. Now, if you want to go to the next slide. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when Sue Ann and I were taking it back and forth, we do distribute fresh produce in the summer. So during the summertime, what we do is we take our programming on the road and we set up events all throughout the community. And those events are free to everyone. They're on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, both in the AM and PM. And you see at the bottom of the screen, it does have a link to all of our events. At those events, we have the 3 areas of our program: Fresh Eats, Fresh Moves, and Fresh Reads. So obviously Eats is the nutritional component, where we do distribute the fresh produce. We also provide recipes to families. We have those available. So in case they're not sure what to do with the produce that they're given, we do have sample recipes that they can take, and those are also available on our website. You can see the link below for recipes. Also included in our summer programming is movement activities. So you'll see a variety of games and activities for children to enjoy with their families or their caregivers that are set up we have a variety both inside and outside, because as we know, the weather can be unpredictable sometimes. And finally, part of our programming is reads. So we do provide free books at all of our events as well. And you can go. That's all I've got for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen.
You bet.
And now that we've heard of all the wonderful things that are going on in our school division and all the hard work that's going on to support nutrition of our students, we want to give Charity an opportunity to speak from Fauquier Fish, because she's going to talk about our community and all the wonderful things our community is doing to help with nutrition for our families.
Thank you, Chrissy. Again, my name is Charity Furness, and I am the Executive Director of Fauquier Fish. At Fauquier Fish, we are a food pantry that is nutritionally focused, and we serve anyone in Fauquier County. We are located in Warrenton. You are welcome to visit our website, which is www.faulquierfish.org, to learn more about us. But Chrissy, if you want to go to the next slide. We've talked about the power of nutrition during this presentation, but at Fauquier Fish, we understand that the most economically poor are often the most nutritionally poor. So we want to provide our families with access to that nutrition. So our food pantry operates differently than a lot of pantries across the nation, where we work with our local farmers to provide the healthiest food possible. We have learned from our friends Jen and Caitlin and Renee that those macro and micronutrients that we're getting from food is so important to the overall well-being of our bodies. So what happens when we don't have access to it? Jen shared some great tips. We shop at Aldi all the time. And we buy a lot of generic foods from our grocery stores like Wegmans and Harris Teeter. We're able to get some really good discounts there. But when you go into a food pantry because you don't have access to the nutrition at home, we want you to have the availability of that food. So when you come into Fish, you are going to be offered what we call our dash meals. They're delicious, they're affordable, they're simple, and they're healthy. And we talk about cooking, the importance of cooking and having that well-balanced diet. And that's what those dash meals do. Renee talked about our mental health. And as parents and as a mom, I know that I'm busy and the kids are like, what's to eat? What's for dinner? And sometimes I go to the grocery store and I come home and I have a cart full of food. And when they say, what's for dinner? I say, I don't know. I haven't had time to think about it. I haven't had time to prepare it. Or I didn't have time or think about making a list and I forget things. And we realize that when our families that can't afford to go to the grocery store and they can't afford to make those mistakes, sometimes when they go to a food pantry, they come home and they only have the ingredients that they were able to get. So we put together these kits so that when they take them home and the kids say, what's for dinner? They have the answer. So these are well-balanced meals that we put together and they are cooking them. The dash meals through the food pantry provide the proteins, the whole grains, the fats that are healthy. And a lot of times we're taking those fruits and vegetables straight off the farm. So we have our partners at the Fauquier Education Farm, Oak Springs Garden Foundation, the Master Gardeners, Pickleball Farm, and they're donating produce. And it's grown right here in Fauquier County. So we know as soon as we cut that zucchini, it starts to lose nutritional value. So Jen talked about eat unlimited from the farms, but not from the factories. So we take that zucchini and we put it right into those dash meals. It is a farm to table through the food pantry, and it's close. And that means that it has the most nutrition value. So once that zucchini is put into those meals, it's not just your roasted zucchini every time. We get creative with it and we have fun with the food. So you have zucchini boats. So you've got a burrito that's no longer in a highly processed tortilla. It's on zucchini, it's fresh. And we do mix it with the beans and the canned goods because we have to stretch that economical, the availability of the financing and how much it costs. But we realize how important that nutrition is to our overall health. So besides just our DASH kits, working with our local farms, our produce farmers, we're also working with our local ranchers. So we work with American Heritage and Sierra Lenda and Whiffletree, and we're getting those local meats and proteins as well, and we add those in. So we talked about, Jen mentioned that the farmers market's reopening for their main season this weekend. When our clients come into the food pantry, we put such an emphasis on that nutrition that we have partnered with the farmers market, our local farmers, and we provide farm bucks. So they are gift cards to the farmers markets. And that allows our families to go and experience the market, but actually to talk to the farmers. I tell the story when I was younger, my aunt and uncle lived on a farm in Illinois, and it's corn and soybeans for as far as you can see, but they were hosting a family from the inner city of Chicago. And these kids had never been to a farm before. And like a lot of farms, they had a pond on their farm. And these kids were so excited because they'd never been to a hot dog farm. And what the kids were seeing were the cattails growing around. And we think about that is that our kids, if they're not exposed to it, they don't understand that hot dogs aren't grown next to a pond. They are produced in that factory. They are highly processed. So they're not the healthiest. So having these gift cards that allows our families to go to the farmers markets, they are meeting one-on-one with those farmers that are growing that squash, that are raising the cattle, so they can answer questions and challenge the kids and the families and ask them what they're looking for in their nutrition as well. So it's a great program. We've got the farm bucks. When you come in to the pantry, you also have access to eggs and milk. Thank you, Chrissy. Eggs and milk and cereal and those oatmeals, those low sugar oatmeals. But the other thing we do is we get the kids involved. Renee talked about getting those kids involved and getting them cooking. So we have a Kids in the Kitchen program. And right now, one of the things in our Kids in the Kitchen program is an oatmeal ball. And that does deal with the oats and canned pumpkin so that those kids can make it. And it does have chocolate chips in it, but those are just those little woes, but they're the treats, but they're nutritionally dense snack items that those kids can make. And it's fun. So as you can see on this slide, our food pantry is open to anyone in Fauquier County of need. So there is no income requirements. We realize that an income is a number, and sometimes things happen and we don't have enough money to put food on our table, or we have to choose, are we going to repair the car? Are we going to put gas in the car so I can get to work? And those are very difficult decisions. So we're here to support our families. I'm looking, I skipped over, I apologize. We're having technical difficulties on my end as well. So I don't have the slides in front of me separately. The other thing at the food pantry is that we understand, Renee talked about whether or not we have food allergies or food sensitivities. Recently, a member of my family was diagnosed with celiac disease, and we realized that the food that she was putting into her body was actually making her sick. And she wasn't able to absorb those nutrients, and it did impact her anxiety. And that's something that when we've gotten the right food into her, her overall health has grown and changed so much. And we realize that those special diets are very important to our overall health. So we do accommodate gluten allergies, low sodium, low sugar, diabetics. we do have those specialty items in the food pantry. If you could go to the next slide, Chrissy. We talk about nutrition in the home and in the kitchen, but also we realize that our kids are going to school, and Sue Ann and Kristen are doing a great job of being able to provide that nutrition during the school day. But our kids are only in school 5 days a week. And we talk about, Caitlin mentioned the power of three. There's 3 meals with 2 to 3 snacks. That's every day. And Sue Ann is able to provide, and the school nutrition is able to provide 2 meals every day, and they're well-balanced meals, but they're not balanced when the kids don't have access to that well-balanced meal. So what happens on Saturday and Sunday, or we've got spring break that's coming up, and the kids don't have access to the food at school, and they don't have access to that well-balanced meal. So Mrs. Compton is a teacher here in Fauquier County, and she told us that if a student is hungry, they can exhibit distracting and rule-breaking behavior because education is not their priority. Hunger is. And I always go back to the Snickers commercial. Snickers coined the phrase hangry, and hangry happens at my house. It is real. But when those kids go to school and they haven't had a good breakfast, and they're not able now, thankfully they have access to that breakfast. But when they arrive to school on Monday and they haven't had a good meal, they haven't had proper nutrition over the weekend, what does that mean to them? What does it mean to their overall behavior and their overall health? So Chrissy, if you want to go to the next slide. The other program that we have at Fauquier Fish beyond our food pantry is our Weekend Power Pack program. Our Weekend Power Pack program started about 10 years ago, and we realized that these kids were getting meals while they were at school, but when they went home, a lot of them didn't have access to food, any food, not just nutritious food, but any food. So we started this program, and we are now operating out of 18 of the 19 county schools, including Head Start. And we send home food for the weekends. And if it's a long weekend, if it's a 3-day weekend, we make sure that the kids have food for all of those days. We just packed this weekend. We had a lot of volunteers come in and they donated their time. And we packed over 550 bags for spring break that the kids are taking home this week. And that includes breakfast and lunch and food for every day that they're going to be out of school, so that when they come back, they are not feeling down because they haven't had that nutrition. During the summer months, we partner with Kristen at Fresh, who has her Fresh Moves, Fresh on Wheels program, and she helps us distribute food to families so they can come to these events that the Fresh team is putting on, and you can get that extra nutrition. We partner with FCCC and the Boys and Girls Club so that we can get that, and then through the county summer school program so that we're sending home food with these kids, because not all of their parents are even able to come to the food pantry or willing to come to the food pantry. So we want to get that directly to them. We are partnering with Chrissy and the county schools and Fresh, and we'll be doing a food drive later in April. So look for more information coming out on that. But Chrissy, that's really what I have, is that nutrition impacts everything about our bodies, and fish is here so that when you don't have access or you can't afford to put the food on the table, that we're here. We're here to support our families. We understand that feeding children is a big expense. The cost of groceries have skyrocketed over the last few years. So absolutely use the services. If you have a friend or a neighbor that you know needs the services, they're welcome to come. We just want to gain access to nutrition for everyone, because we understand the overall health of one child is the overall health of our community.
Well, thank you so much, Charity, and for I know Megan Oakley's on our watching our webinar right now, and thank you to her for all the hard work you guys do for Fauquier Fish, and what all of you do on here every day to support our students and our families, whether in the school system, in the hospital, through teaching us about nutrition, through working with families individually, through working with our community. We can't thank you enough for all that you do. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to open the floor up. We have a little less than, 30 minutes to give people an opportunity to ask any questions to our panel. We also have, don't forget, Donna's on here from Student Services as well to answer any questions from the school division. But if you have questions about our nutrition in the school system, if you have questions about fish, if you have questions about fresh, about mental health, anything at all, anything from our nutritionists, any information that they shared, what you can do right now is go to the bottom of your screen and click on the chat and write any questions that you have, or you can put anything into the Q&A. We can answer any of those. So take an opportunity now and ask away. Don't be shy. If we don't have any questions, maybe I can throw out some common questions. Maybe some of our panelists can throw out some common questions that they've had.
I have a thought real quick. I know when I was an attendee versus a presenter, wasn't able to put anything in the chat.
Okay.
Are they able to access that?
They should.
Okay.
Carol's saying no. And I know when I had that same problem, I wasn't able to access the chat as well.
Okay, so this is back to the issues that we were having.
I'm seeing a question. Are you guys seeing that?
Are you seeing a question? Okay, let's see.
So I've got, why did the woman from Fauquier Health say non-sugar is better? You guys seeing that one?
Okay.
In the Q&A.
In the Q&A, okay. Let's see. Mine is not showing that, so go for it.
Okay, so I'm not, unfortunately, I saw it. I think I'm the woman from Fauquier, maybe. Hey y'all, I'm Jen, the dietitian. For those of you who signed on later, nutrition manager at the hospital. Non-sugar is better. I do remember when Renee from the Mental Health Association was speaking, she spoke about avoiding sugar substitutes. Oh, maybe there's something new that clears that up for me. Whereas the mental health said artificial sweeteners affect mood. Okay, that's what I thought, because I also was listening. I was like, I feel like there's a little conflicting information here. So the current evidence-based science, in fact, there was just a huge release about artificial sweeteners recently. And so as dietitians, we have to go with, what do scientific studies say? Because this is certainly a topic that has been researched a lot. The original studies that came out about the damaging effects of artificial sweeteners were found to be poorly conducted scientific research. And so that has held true for the last 20 years. Now, again, food from the farm, right? Fresh things, natural things are always best. And one of the big things when we talk about nutrition and health is individualizing the care. So if I have a student I'm working with who is struggling with overweight and obesity, and that health condition is predisposing them to something like diabetes, I'm going to recommend something different, say than if I have a student who is struggling with an eating disorder, or a student who is struggling with weight loss during their sports season. So it's really important to, first of all, individualize and know that one size doesn't fit all. And also to refer to good, sound evidence-based recommendations when it comes to making health decisions. So we know that excess intake of calories is negative. If you have someone who is unable to, say, drink water, but they would drink a diet soda if they needed to cut their calories, and we're saying 1 or 2 diet sodas a day, that might be best for that person. Whereas if we have someone who's really struggling with their mental health and working on improving their gut biome, that person might choose not to use an artificial sweetener. So really individualizing recommendations and tailoring them to what each person needs. And it is tricky. So talking to a health professional, you guys have all heard the idea of the death of expertise. There are still clinicians who are experts in their fields, and I would absolutely recommend always talking to an expert in their field. I will say that I'm pretty practical when it comes to nutrition, just because I've got kids, we live a normal life, we eat normal things and everything in moderation. I've had clients on the spectrum from very wealthy who we're just tailoring really, really minute details of their athletic performance, to clients where mom is working 3 jobs and we're trying to put food on the table. And so kind of, again, what are your own individualized barriers to meeting your needs? Hopefully that clears up the question a little bit for you, but I definitely agree. I heard the same kind of conflicting things there. Katie, you want to take the next one? There's a question.
Sure. Yeah, this is a great question. So I think some of that depends on the reluctance. So in the
Hold up one second, Kate. I don't
Yeah.
know that everybody can see the Q&A, so I'm going to read the question real quick.
Oh.
Okay, so so Jennifer and Katie, what have you seen as some of the most successful ways to get reluctant children to try more healthy foods?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question. So it's a little bit contingent, like Jen was talking about. In the eating disorder space, I see a lot of really selective eating or picky eating that might be coming from a place of a traumatic experience around food or some hypersensitivities to food. Things of that nature, and we might handle that a little bit differently. Across the board, I would say just increasing exposure to more healthy foods, and whether or not that's encouraging them to eat those foods or just be comfortable having them around and having them on the table. So one kind of first step that I'm doing with families is, like, can we do like a family style meal where the kid has access to all of those different things, but they're choosing what they're putting on their plate and it's not feeling forced, and considering it a win if they get at least like 3 different types of foods on their plate. If the kids are a little bit younger, one way to increase exposure as well is incorporating food into play. So if your kid is younger, maybe ages like 3 to 7 or so, we might do like, can we use these foods, like different fruits and vegetables, as like building blocks? Can we make pictures with them? Can we use like a yogurt dip and make pictures out of the foods? And I know probably a lot of people were told like not to play with their food, but there's some evidence to support that just increasing that exposure and letting them get tactile, letting them experience the different sort of sensory experiences of that food can be really helpful. And one thing that I will add to this, it can be really helpful to incorporate those more like healthful foods. Maybe it's fruits and vegetables, maybe it's whole grains, with the foods that they already like. So if they already really like mac and cheese, can we incorporate some different veggies into a mac and cheese? There's a ton of great like one pot veggie mac and cheese recipes online that are super easy to make, and using things that they're already enjoying. The caveat with that I like to talk about is making sure that we're being really transparent with kids about what we're putting in their food. So I think we're definitely in a place with nutrition counseling where we're retiring the concept of sneaking food in. I've seen that, backfire a lot, because if you're, you take a food that a kid really enjoys, like brownies, and then they learn that you've put something in it that they're really hesitant around, then they might be less likely to eat those foods in the future, and they might feel even more resistant to try different things. So I think it's absolutely okay to, put those foods in the things that they enjoy and be transparent around that. Like tonight, we're going to maybe try this mac and cheese with something new added in, things like that. Is that helpful? Any other questions around that? Jen, feel free to add.
Yeah, I was going to say that was so great, Katie. I loved it. I was going to say one more tip, something that I used to share with parents when I was working specifically with peds, is helping kids understand that you might not like it the first time you try it, but to continue to try it. We have a kind of a little rule that, and I read it in an article somewhere, but it was probably 20 years ago. Generally speaking, you have to be introduced to something new 12 times before it becomes something comfortable. So that's an easy, idea to share with the child is, hey, and always asking and inviting. I do think this idea of moving away from the need to control as parents and giving control to children will kind of stave off food problems as they get older, eating disorders or overeating disorders on either direction. So remembering our goal isn't to control, but our goal is to promote their ability to make good choices. And one way to do that is to say, hey, there's broccoli tonight. I'd love it if you try it. That's kind of how it goes in my house. I'd really love it if you try it. I'm not going to force it. But then also saying, it will take you several tries to like it. So if you could just try it, that'd be awesome. Kind of de-escalating is a great way to talk about it. And they will notice when mom is different. I remember I had a knockdown drag out with one of my kids when they were like 3 years old and did the whole, you will not get up until you eat a green bean. Don't do that.
I think we all remember those days.
I think I won, but it's not a good win as a parent. So they notice when you kind of change and say, okay, you know what, here it is, let's try it. It's good for you. And like Katie said, being really transparent and honest and open in the conversation. It just builds a relationship with your kids that's really fun and not negative. So the other question that I'm seeing now is, are there quizzes online for determining if our current diet or eating habits is what we should be doing based on age and gender? So that's a great question, because what we need, like the idea of our current diet or what we're taking in, it really does vary based on age and gender. So generally speaking, if I had a student who was a male and a student who was a female, and they're both 15, it's really going to depend on how tall they are. And the fact that they're boys and girls means their metabolism is just different. So as dietitians, we always calculate when we're working with someone just to get a general idea of that pie chart that Katie showed us of your total daily well, in the hospital, we use a different term. So total daily energy intake. So kind of, yes, it's calculated based on those things. You could definitely look up on the internet and Google resting metabolic rate, RMR, and you would be able to put in your height, weight, gender, things like that, and get kind of a general idea of calories. The use for calorie counting, it's really a short-term thing. We don't want anybody counting their calories long-term because it can become burdensome and obsessive and just not a good thing. The usefulness of calorie counting is a week to 2 weeks where you can kind of get an idea of what's in the foods you're eating to make helpful choices going forward. But I'll definitely defer to Katie because she might have some great resources on this that are clinically based.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know of any like reputable online quizzes that I could think of. And generally, like I think Jen and I are probably both using like equations that we've learned in school to estimate these things for individuals based on their age and gender. And at the end of the day, an activity level. I'll add that as well. Height, etc. At the end of the day, those are estimates. I've seen them be like, several hundred calories off in different directions. Protein needs might end up being a little bit greater. I think, working with a dietitian, they can give you a great starting place for that. I would be cautious of, my gut tells me that a lot of things online will probably underestimate for folks. And one thing to consider too that I really encourage for folks that I'm working with as well is that concept of like intuitive eating. And so like tuning into our body's internal cues of hunger and fullness, and using that as a way of regulating our energy intake. Our bodies are actually really well designed to do that on their own. It can take some work to learn to listen to that, but using that as well. I hope that's helpful.
That's great.
Chrissy, if I could just also, this is Renee from Mental Health. We haven't really talked about hydration. And I think I still remember working at my last school and I got a prescription from a doctor who told me one of my athletes who had been on ADHD medicine. Now, I'm not telling everyone to jump off your ADHD medicine, but he had taken her off her medicine and he told me in this prescription that I had to let her go to the bathroom anytime she needed to, but she needed to drink a liter of water per class period. And they also had taken care of her electrolytes and all that. And what was amazing is that it did turn out that she was chronically dehydrated, and that is what was impacting her ability to pay attention. So, those fluids are very important, and especially like water, not the heavy soft drinks, not the Gatorade. If you're going to drink Gatorade, that was designed for elite athletes. I know that a lot of people want to think that when they take their walk or they, run their mile or two, they're elite athletes, but don't need the same, nutrition that our professional athletes do. So, staying hydrated is also great. The studies I was referencing about the link between artificial sweeteners and mood are coming out of the schools of psychiatry. So out of Harvard and out of Brigham Young Women's. So, what you can do is you can just try it. And again, as Jennifer and Ashley shared, if there are some disordered eating or, other metabolic conditions that are affecting you, then yes, using those artificial sweeteners in moderation. I still remember my aunt who was diagnosed diabetic, just switched out all her sugar for, which one was it? One of the pink one. Whatever the pink one is, in the little Sweet and Low. Was that Sweet and Low? Anyway, she then developed, she developed early onset Alzheimer's. And so she was qualified for this, she went up to NIH. And in order to qualify for this new study, she had to see a nutritionist and see a bunch of other people. And the nutritionist said, I want you to go home and stop all the artificial sweeteners you're using. And all her Alzheimer's symptoms went away. It was because it was causing a chemical imbalance in her gut, which was then impacting her ability to think. And so did she still have diabetes? Yes. Was she able to use as much Sweet and Low as she used to? No. So again, everything in moderation.
All good points. We do have another question that actually came from a student. It says, I hear a lot about genetic testing to tailor my diet to what's best for me. Does anyone know? And the person writing this said, I'm hoping, her comment to her was, I'm hoping the result from the test is that I can eat as much chocolate and popcorn as I can. Our nutritionist, any comments to that?
I've looked into these, and I would say I think this is potentially the future of nutrition. I would say that the science is not quite there yet to support these in terms of drop something, using those tests and then fully tailoring your diet around that. I think that's possible, that that's something that we'll be able to lean on a little bit more in the next few decades. I think the research is still a little young to put all of our eggs in that basket. That's kind of my take for right now. But yeah, I'm curious to hear others' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Katie said. It's new and exciting science. There's absolutely something there. And one of the things, that has been interesting to work in outpatient nutrition over the years is to see the differences in how people's bodies accept different things. I'll have patients who can eat all the potatoes they want, and they're great. And then I'll have patients who can't touch a potato because of how it affects their blood sugars. So I kind of see things like that as a diabetes educator. So absolutely 100% without question, there are genetic components to how our body metabolizes the macronutrients that Katie was talking about in that earlier slide. I don't know that it's going to tell you whether or not you can eat as much chocolate and popcorn as you want, but good news is if you're making your popcorn without a lot of added ingredients, it's a generally pretty healthy snack, pretty safe, and breaking off little squares of, dark chocolate's always better just because it has less sugar in it. So dark chocolate generally is considered to be a pretty, safe go-to sweet treat in moderation after a meal. In our office over here, we have like a little shelf where we keep our dietitian chocolates, and usually there's a little bit of breaking of chocolate after a meal. So yeah, those are two things that in moderation, and they're pretty generally helpful things. Hopefully that helps.
Great answers. So I just wanted to let everybody know we have about 5 minutes left. Some of us were told that the chat might be giving you some problems to put questions, but the Q&A is working for everybody. So we'll give you about 1 more minute to put any questions you might have if you were having issues with the chat for any of our panel. And I want to say about the food at the schools and with Fresh and their support. I am a mother of 2 boys, one in elementary school in 4th grade and one in 6th grade middle school, and they are kind of picky eaters, and they feel like Kristen is a movie star and that she's like royalty because she comes in with these really cool things like the smoothie bikes and does all these really cool things with the food, and they'll try things there and then they'll come home and they'll want to try things at home. So they're doing great work there with the farm to table and being able to provide new ideas to foods. And the smoothie is like, I can do anything with a smoothie because it's like a milkshake. And I like you said, be honest, they'll come out and say, "What's in this, Mom?" And I'll say, "Well," you're like, "There's something green in it." I said, "Well, yes, there's some kale." "Oh, okay." And then they're good with it because it tastes, they don't really taste it. So we're good because it's like a milkshake. So we can always do a smoothie. Okay, so I don't see any more questions coming in. So I'm going to assume everybody is good. So I'm going to close us out, and I want to say thank you to all that joined us tonight to listen to the webinar. We apologize if there were any kinks with your getting on or being able to chat. Teams is still a little quirky with us. I want to thank our speakers so much for giving up their evening to join us tonight. And I want to let you know, be on the lookout for a recording of this webinar in our family newsletters. Again, if you came in later in the presentation, all the slides will be shared with you. Your email was given to us because you registered. It'll also, the presentation with all the links provided will be given in the newsletter under the video recording. And I need to do a little plug for April. We will not be having a family webinar in the month of April. Instead, we will be having an in-person event. April 25th, we'll be holding a mental health and wellness fair at the Fauquier Health Building. So we'll be over with Jen from 6 to 8 p.m. And we want to make sure you come join us and learn about all things wellness, all things mental health. So if you didn't get a chance to ask your question tonight, come out that night and get all your questions answered and get a ton of great resources from a bunch of different community members that support our community. Food will also be provided that night for free from the bistro. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you to our team of wonderful food and wellness, mental health wellness experts. And we hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and we will see you next time. Bye all.